Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another edition of WOWSA Live with a very special guest and our host, Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Our next guest is an honoree, Sid Cassidy. You were 19 years old. You had a tan. You had blonde curly hair. You were sitting on the lifeguard chair up in Ocean Beach, New Jersey. You had won the Atlantic City race. Every young girl walking by the beach thought you were some sort of Superman. And now you're a well-respected swim coach. Sid, where did it go wrong?
Steve,
we think you've stopped at your end.
I can see you, Ned. I've got Steve on frozen, but there were some good days back at the Jersey Shore.
And you can still be there, Sid.
I did go back once. I started in Ocean City, loved it there, was in the 70s, and then in the 1980s and 90s went back to Atlantic City. Loved working there with the city of Atlantic City as well. But, down here in Boca Raton, I'll tell you, if I had my choice during this time of year and all the terrible last couple of months we've been through, I'm glad I'm in Florida instead of New Jersey, to tell you the truth.
How did you get hooked up with a professional swimming circuit? Who lured you? Who told you? What did you see?
The man's name was James Whalen. And Jim Whalen, as we know, he was a lifeguard for many years in Atlantic City, and he eventually became the mayor of Atlantic City. And Jim was also a swim coach at Temple in Philadelphia. He was a beach guard. He was about 10 years my senior, but he took a keen interest in me when I joined Ocean City in 1976. And we did a lot of training. And he came up to me when I finished my collegiate career and was interested because he wanted a partner to swim in the 24 Hours of Latuke. So it became quite an adventure. I said, sure, I'm finished with the NCAA. Now I'll consider going up there. It was about a 10-hour drive, and quite the education in the World Professional Marathon Swimming Federation I got that summer.
So I have to set you up with this. We spoke to Paul Asmuth a couple of days ago, and he relayed this story about doing that event with James Kegley, who's, by the way, on tomorrow. And Paul said, yeah, we agreed we'd each do 3 laps, but at like 4 o'clock in the morning, it was really dark and I was really cold. So I hid in the toilet or something and made James do 4 laps. So we're going to get James's story of whether he ever spoke to the man again. I don't know. We will find out. But you had an interesting experience in that 24-hour event with your partner.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I went up there twice, and I'm sorry that race does not go on. I'd love to see it come back, or, based on like Le 24 Heures Le Mans. My dad used to watch the car race all the time. And when the concept of swimming for 24 hours came with you and one partner, it was generally regarded as the toughest, even though the course was a third of a mile roughly to get around, 7-8 minutes in the beginning, 9, 10, 11 minutes at the end. It was tough. It had about 13 or 14 turns, these painted Clorox bottles, just phenomenal history there. But what I had, the first year I went up with Jim Whalen, and Jim just crapped out. We didn't know much about nutrition. We were lifeguards in South, and we picked up a trainer up there who was a local guy who had us eating nothing but canned peaches. And somehow all that sugar got to Jim in the middle of the night, and he passed out. And the trainer comes out, and he was an older gentleman from, the Quebec area. And he's telling me in his best broken English to keep going, do another lap. And finally, I had done 3 or 4, and then realized, I said, well, what's going on? He said, and then Jim's wife, Kathy, came out and said, Jim's not coming back. He's passed out. And so I swam about another 5 or 6 hours and didn't finish that one. But the following year was teamed up with Jim Barry. And God rest his soul, he died. not long ago, but I do know that he was a hot swimmer out of Chico State, and Jim Barry had won the Atlantic City race, and I was second, John Kinsella third, Claudio Plitt fourth, and those guys weren't paired up with each other. They were with, so Barry and I were set to win this thing for sure. We were the guys, and we were going up there 1 week after Atlantic City. And what happened was James Barry was very involved in athletes' rights. He really believed that we should have a swimmers union. The professional athletes here in this particular race in Canada were receiving the same prize money that they had given out 10 years earlier. Although the festival was now making multitudes more, millions of dollars. They had put up all these structures. A lot of things had been added to the week festival. We weren't even asking for the top 10 positions to change, but if you finished 11th through, I think, 15th or 20th, the last 10, you got the equivalent of $200 per team. And that was $100 each, about $4 an hour to work for 24 hours straight. So we were pushing for that, and we ended up doing a swim slowdown, which was a crazy thing. And the year later, that was 79. The next year is when Kegley and Asmuth came back. But shortly after that, the swim kind of lost and they dropped it. But boy, that Latuque race was phenomenal.
You passed over quite quickly, beating John Kinsella in the open water. There's not too many people, Sid, who can say that. What I'd suggest is you get that printed on the front of your shirt, get a whole bunch of those shirts made up, and just walk around a lot. Because, Kinsella, he didn't get beat that often.
No, I had some great races with John, and I was really kind of doing it more as a lark. The first year that I did any marathon swim and took any money for it was the 78. And Jim Whalen was bringing the Around the Island swim back. He did I said, oh, we can do that. And there's some local guys. I swam with them. And then the next year, we invited Kinsella, Plitt, all the big ones. And John Kinsella, I did a number of races up in Canada with him, and pretty phenomenal guy. I'm very proud to have beat him once. Without any doubt, a lot of it was because it was my home course. I knew the water. I had a great trainer, and I was in pretty good shape. And John was a little bit older, 2 or 3 years ahead of me, and it was one of the first races of the year. But thanks, Ned. Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember swimming with him so many times, and at the end, he would just, boom, pull ahead and use those big, long arms. But I would say I used to consider Kinsella the greatest ever following Abo Heath. But once Paul Asmuth came on the scene, man, it'd be hard to argue with that decade, at least during the 1980s. There was nobody better than Paul Asmuth.
And then you quickly follow with Stroychev and Lurs in there, and it's getting there are these dominant figures in this period of time. We had on the Argentinian swimmer Damian Blaum, and he said he raced the Corona swim 14 times before he won it, and he said Stroychev was there. And we all kind of understood it. So Sid, take me now. You've made the ridiculous move of coming off the lifeguard chair. And you eventually get into coaching. Bring me up to Perth, 1991. Give us a kind of a synopsis of your experience and how important that World Championship was to the United States.
Well, Ned, it was the very first time that USA Swimming really treated open water swimmers on an equal basis with our pool swimmers. We got all the same equipment first time. We traveled on the same planes. We flew to the World Championships, not just some, standalone open water World Championships, but the 25-kilometer race was added, and a great deal of work on that was Dale Petronic, Penny Dean, a lot of people not only in the U.S. but around the world. And when we got the 25K into the World Championships, I was going over there as one of the national team coaches. I had my own swimmer was Jay Wilkerson, who had been the 25K national champ just ahead of Chad Hundeby. So the two of them, and then we had Martha Yon out of Illinois and Karen Burton, longtime great swimmer still to this day, who was the Air Force Academy of course, for many years. And those 4 swimmers ended up, I think Wilkerson was the only one who did an individual medal. He got 4th or 5th, had a great race and just touched out a guy from Switzerland, but got enough points. And then Shelley Taylor-Smith won the women, but our girls got 2nd and 3rd with Karen and Martha. And then Chad Hundeby got 1st, and he and Jay were in that fight. So when we came back, we brought a trophy home, and USA Swimming, Ray Essick was in charge. And actually, Denny Persley was great support as a national team director. And they saw that how big it was in Australia. And in the Swan River, we only did 2 laps. It was a 12.5K to the turnaround point and then swim back. And it was a tidal river, and they kind of, part of it was against, part of it was with, but it was just these giant, and if you talk to Shelley, she'll remember these giant jellyfish, cabbage jellyfish that you bump into the whole time. And Wilkerson got out, he had everywhere, red marks. But the people on the FINA, they had a big yacht, and they went up and back the whole way with us. And when they got off, they had quite a bit of caviar and champagne, I think. They were all in, this race is great, this race is great. And yet we realized that, at 5, 6, 7 hours, it was great for that day for us, and it's great for the real marathon swimming. But the more and more we tried to push for Olympic inclusion, we were just, we kept getting knocked back every time when we talked that 25K.
You had an event that is now snuck in to be a bit topical. You took the first ever swimmers to a place in China that no one's ever heard of until recently, called Wuhan. Bring us back to your impressions of the time. That was a while ago.
It was, and I got a call from headquarters at USA Swimming in Colorado, probably 6 or 8 weeks before this race, which was on May 1st, 2001, I believe it was. But they had our national champions that year were John Flanagan and Erica Rose. John is now a coach out in Hawaii, great open water swimmer still to this day. And then Erica Rose, of course, many-time national champion and was a great pool swimmer too. USA Swimming said, hey, China's never invited us to any of their competitions like this. Would you be interested in taking a couple swimmers? We're just going to send the 3 of you over. I said, sure, let's go. And Erica was swimming for Northwestern. John was actually finished college swimming. And what it was a race across the Yangtze River. And Mao Tae-sung, that was his hometown. And when we got to Wuhan, it was a beautiful city, very clean. And in that year, this is almost 20 years ago, it was industrial, yes, but a lot of people riding bikes, not so much cars. When they were cleaning the streets, the brooms had twigs, and it was like, but it was a really cool intermediate technology. Not when they did the swim, there were millions of people around. It was May Day, so it was like a huge celebration.
And you're not exaggerating when you say millions, are you?
Oh, no. There were millions of people. Getting from one side of the river to the other was crazy if you weren't going in the boat. Like, it would take hours just to go 1.5 miles across one of the bridges. But what we had was the boys' heat, the men's heat went first. And Flanagan was way ahead, but he misjudged. The current was so strong. It had been raining for days, and it just cleared up. So the current it was a 1 mile swim, but it was really just get across the river and let the current pull you down, which, as Eric and I are watching, he ended up missed the finish and had to swim back 25 yards. It took him about 7 or 8 minutes to get down to that mark and about 20 to 25 minutes to do the last 110 meters against the current. He refused to quit, and they had people with nets. Erica took the high road. She had the fastest time ever. She won. They were trying to give her diamonds and jade, and she's like, no, my NCAA eligibility. And it was a crazy time. But that night, we met one of the very influential Asian International Olympic Committee members on the award boat. And when I talked to him at length about our vision to maybe not have this 1 mile race or this 25K race, but something in between into the Olympics, he was all for it. And then as I understand it, when we did get to that point, he was one of the guys that stood up and spoke positively about our efforts.
You were right in the heart of getting marathon in the Olympics, so thank you very much, Sid. Let's park that for a second. Once it's been decided it's going to be in Beijing, you were over there 3 or 4 times ahead of time, and then there was some drama right before the races. I mean, Sid, what's so tough? You get a couple of milk bottles, you get some string, you get a brick. Help everybody understand what's so complicated about this stuff.
Oh, well, Ned, that's the way you might have done it in the early days, or Steve, but now we're in the Olympic Games, and the hardest part was coordinating with the other international federations. So back when we got it in, we always talked about, okay, well, there always is going to be rowing. We could use their course, and which we successfully did in Montreal at the World Championships, but there was no rowing going on. Now we're in Beijing, and the 3 or 4 trips, 5 trips to get over there weren't just to deal with the Chinese, but it was also, I was chairman of the committee for FINA, and I would have the chairman of the committee for canoe and kayak, which was considered the younger stepsister of rowing, which was in rowing, that was the Olympic sport. They didn't like giving up their venue to canoe and kayak, which they've been doing now for 15 or 20 years when we got there. And now it's like, we got to share with another international federation. So the hard part was just getting time and also making sure that, because it was so limited, our time on the course and our time to set the exact feeding stations and things the way we wanted, and the cameras and the whole, it was a lot of work, but I do give it. And when the Chinese people were great, because they would say, yes, I think we can do that. Let me just ask my superior. And then they would ask his superior. And the next, it just kept kicking things up the chain. And it would take a week or 2 to get an answer to, hey, can we move this buoy 20 yards down the field?
You were in charge of the event, and you were also in charge of the appeals process. Describe to people these fouls in open water competition and how appeals typically work.
Wow. How they typically work is that they bring money. The coaches bring money. They don't like the result. So-and-so pushed me, pulled me, this and that. And, when Olympic medals, and more than that, people's livelihoods are on the line. I think the race we've had the most appeals with through the course of the years have been the Olympic qualification races, because as you know, the top 10 guys get in, and I'm only going anecdotally. I don't know that for fact. But I know that early on, we would have, a lot of appeals, and probably 9 out of 10 appeals get turned down. So when guys, they come up with the 100, now it's 500 Swiss francs or US dollars. But I do remember one very successful appeal.
Sorry, Sid, before you go on, I think you need to make this clear. This isn't money they give to you as head of the appeals committee. This is what they have to pay to lodge an appeal officially. Yeah, you need to make that clear, Sid.
Exactly. There is a protocol that FINA has established for any type of appeal, and it's whether it's water polo, synchro, or swimming, it doesn't matter. And they've just recently upped that from $100 to $500. That money goes to the organizers of the event. So we do collect it initially, but we do turn it over. But the one time when Fran Crippen was swimming and had the lead, and I thought it was Andrew Gemmel and Fran Crippen coming to the end of the 10K World Championship, and we were in Rome. We were in actually near Rome. I mean, the pool meet was in Rome, and we were down in the Mediterranean. And what happened was, in the course of the meeting, it was very clearly explained that the intermediate buoys, which were yellow in color, you could go on either side of. And then only the orange buoys, the 4 orange buoys, and we made this very clear. I was the one who stood up and explained to all the athletes, that only the orange buoys, 4 times around or 5 times, and then boom, in the chute. Well, the end of the chute, they had yellow buoys. Fran Crippen is swimming and has the lead, and he's coming in. As you're looking down the chute, he's to the left. Andrew Gemmell, Thomas Lurs are off to the right, along with, I think it was Thomas. It might have been one of the Italian guys. I can't remember the exact, but Fran hit his head straight into the buoy. And I mean, I was like incredulous. I'm there as the chairman watching this. He bounces off of it, shakes it, and he's disoriented, and he swims 4 or 5 strokes on the outside of the lane line attached to that yellow buoy. Now, it's already cost him 4 or 5 seconds, and on the other side of the field, say Lurs and Gemmell are just taking off, and Fran, kind of catch himself together. Now he falls back. He's in 5th place, I think and he swims down right, and he ends up in 3rd, touches just ahead of the other 2 guys, and so the Americans got 2nd and 3rd, and immediate protest, of course. And our own chairman actually was, we got called into the whole FINA bureau. It was crazy stuff. But the reality, because I had explained that the color of the buoys, they turned it over. They didn't like it. It took a day and a half. They finally did the presentations the next day at the pool. But I'll never forget how relieved I was, because that was my last little bit of business. And then I was going to retire. That was 2009. Everything was good. We'd gotten into the Olympics. I'd done all my stuff. Okay, I'm going to turn it over now. And that was a period of time. The next couple of years, tragically, we lost Fran. And Steve stepped up and stepped down, and it found out that the position in FINA wasn't what he wanted to do. And they were like, okay. And next thing I know, I got USA Swimming calling me to come back, and Fran has passed. The whole thing's gotten crazy. But I really kind of came back then more as kind of like the elder, and I got a lot more respect when I came back to the committee that second time. I joined in 96. I had about a 1.5 year hiatus right in the middle, and been on ever since.
So fast forward to Rio. You're now a referee, and your decisions are getting appealed, if I'm correct.
Oh, absolutely.
So you already knew how the process worked, but from the other chair.
The situation in Rio, and I'll tell you, we had some real challenges. The media and the PR leading up to it were going to say how horrible open water swimming is going to be, the pollution, this and that. Well, the reality was, it was a beautiful venue, and the water was clean and clear. We were out in the ocean, and every time some of these media sources would show you why not go to Rio, they'd be pulling up, old beef reels from, whatever kind of pollution. But the reality was, that storm got so big, a squall came in 2 days before the Olympics and completely turned over the feeding platform, which had been a big barge that the Navy from Brazil had brought in. We were scrambling just to get the course set up. And when the course was set up, if you look at it above for the men's race, the angle of the chute isn't perfect. And so the guys knew that, and they were getting ready to kind of jostle and push each other. And if you remember that race, there was the Australian boy who went way out ahead, and he had a huge lead, and everybody reeled him in with about 8.5K, 9K, and it was a valiant effort. But now everybody's together. They've been working as a pack. And this pack of men are, without question, the best marathon swimmers in the world. For a 10K, they could just crank. And very few were given anything. My assistant made a call on the other side against the British boy. And I was looking up here at the very front. He was back here. And we hear all these stories of what went on. So he put out an appeal. Then the Greek boy, because the timing system, what happened was the timing system on Spiros, the Greek guy, just missed the touchpad, but his wrist set off the Omega like he had touched first, but you could clearly see he missed it by 6 inches. And that's when we had the champion come in and touch, and
Sorry.
and then they had an appeal. So yeah, that afternoon we had to deal with a couple of appeals, but we all got through it.
We give Spiros credit by basically telling his federation, I got the silver medal, stop this already. That's the story we're going with.
They were just saying, why don't you just give 2 golds? And the head of their federation and the head of their organization, everybody, the chef de mission, everybody's coming down. Oh, but he did so great, and it was tremendous effort for a guy at that age to be at that stage of his career. But no, I mean, eventually we got it right, and we learned a lot. The guys from Omega have been great. I mean, every time we have a problem, they come up with a new solution. And I've got to say, I'm really proud that they're a big sponsor of the Olympics and the FINA World Championships, because they make it a lot easier. And in reality, the time, as you know, Ned, doesn't matter at all. And that's why the video, the critical component of the finish are the judges who see you touch, and then, of course, the video replay, which we use so often. So
Spiros is being inducted into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. He'll be in New York next May because we've had to postpone. You've received the very prestigious Davis Wheeler Award from the International Swimming Hall of Fame. You're supposed to be there in April next year. Do I need to get between you two guys, or is it okay now?
Oh, no. Spiro is fine with it. He's such a gentleman. And I think the whole push, like when he saw the video, he understood. He's like, okay, I missed it. I understand why my time came up first, because that's the way the system works. Yeah. But no. It was more his better. They were so excited. They wanted him to have the gold. But, he's a gentleman. And I think in the most part, and Ned, that, certainly Steve, everybody, our sport really does breed a familiarity that becomes family. Like you may race against a kid like Damian Blom 25 times and come down to the end, right? Yeah, this and that. But you're going to go out and have dinner with him and share a couple beers and have a great time laughing and telling stories. And that's just the fraternity of open water marathon swimming.
I met Spiros a year or two ago in Kalamata, Greece, after the big swim down there. And hundreds and hundreds of kids just were trying to climb on top of this guy. Whether it was a silver, a bronze, a gold, or whatever it was, he was absolutely, like John Lennon had arrived at a rock concert or something. They just absolutely loved him. And as you're right, he was absolutely a gentleman, and we look forward to seeing him again. Sid, what's the future of open water competition? We spoke to Ronnie Wong, who took over from you as the Technical Open Water Swim Committee chairperson. And he kind of was a bit worried about sponsorship for the longer distances. Is that the number one biggest threat to the sport?
It definitely is in the ultra marathon races, getting enough people to still sponsor it. And I know Ronnie does a great job running a 10K race over in Hong Kong every year, running up a mile, you get thousands of people, and he's been in it for many, many years. But he's right. Our hardest challenge is finding enough sponsors so that we can take care. And not that if you go up to Canada to swim in, any of the races that are up there, it's not a matter of that locally people don't love it and that the local people won't support it and come out. But even here in the USA, I know for many years, just trying to get people, we lost the 25K as a national championship more than a decade ago. USA Swimming said, nobody's entering. We're spending too much money. We can't do this. And it does come down to money, but there's such a great challenge. And from the many swims you've done, there's something, and not to take anything away from the 10K, because we never would have been in the Olympics with anything other than a 2-hour event. Anything longer, forget it. But this opportunity to say, bring back the Around the Island swim. Last year, Samantha Shabatar swam a solo. Phenomenal athlete. She was on our USA national team back in the 90s. And the local people in Atlantic City are very excited, but being able to get one big national sponsor, it's a tough one. You know, I do think that our international races like Capri, Napoli, like Atlantic City, if they could come back, certainly the races in Canada. You know, there were races in the Nile River back in the day, Alexandria, the South American races. We definitely need to bond together. And I think it's been tough because FINA sets the bar so high and they have so many different requirements that a lot of these kind of mom and pop organizations that have been hosting here in this little South American town for so many years just find it hard, you know, to get that amount of cash and to get that amount of prize money and to put that many people up. And so, yeah, it comes down to money. It's money like everything else.
Well, Sid, we're gonna sign off in a minute, but I did want to congratulate you. I was speaking to Penny Lee Dean the other day, and as you're probably aware, well, you will be aware because you were the first one to enter, the 100th anniversary of the Wrigley event, 2027, the big Catalina to Shore event. I understand you were the first person to enter. You got a seniors discount, so it didn't cost you very much. So I want to make sure you just get in shape for that, Sid. We're going to be watching you now.
I am very much in tune with trying to be in Catalina as a healthy, happy human being in 2027. I would love to support the 100th anniversary. I think that race would be phenomenal. I didn't know Penny had ponied up my entry fee already. But you know, I was lucky enough to be a coach on a Catalina crossing. I have not done the solo yet. I was definitely interested. I love it out there, but yeah, that could be a big time. It could be a big time. We got a few years to get ready for it, but
the last time they had 102 people start the race, and one naked Canadian 17-year-old finished it. So you know, it changed the sport.
And he had to hitchhike when his motorcycle broke to get out there. Great story.
Great story. Great story. Sid, thank you very much for your time today. And I know between getting back on the lifeguard stand and Catalina, you know, you got a few good years ahead of you.
Thank you, Ned. It's always great to see you. And thank you, and Steve, but thank you for all the work you've done here for the International Swimming Marathon Hall of Fame. I mean, I just think, like, with the hours that you put into this job, and plus all the hours you're still doing on all your swimming, we all owe you a big debt of gratitude. So thank you, Ned.
Cheers, Sid.